Here in America, the tax bill has passed and will soon be signed into law. Now, does this mean that most Americans are going to find a little more money in their pockets? Or does this mean the rich just get richer and the middle class is one step closer to the poorhouse? Maybe we should all start wearing shirts that just say drone across them? I don't know. I don't have any of those answers. All I can tell you for certain is the Daily Dope is in the air. Hi, gang. Jeff McAleer once again. I am your host here at the Daily Dope, as well as I happen to be the Grand Poobah of thegaminggang.com. And today is Wednesday, December 20th. It is Wargame Wednesday. I talk about Wargames mostly on Wednesdays, so thank you for stopping by to take a peek. I did open up the show with the whole tax bill thing, and I stay out of politics as far as this show goes. I am very politically motivated, but not in front of the camera, nor on the Daily Dope. But I know there are a lot of people out there who are upset. I'm not thrilled, gotta be honest. But you know what? I have many friends who are on multiple sides of the aisle. I have some friends who are over in Europe who really don't care about what's going on in American politics either. But I have to say, when people are upset, and I have to say that for quite a while, people on both sides of the aisle have been pretty upset about different things. And this is the time where you got to take the simple pleasures in life and enjoy them and grab onto them, because otherwise it would just drive you mad. Anywho, I know plenty of you are tuning in to watch live, so we can see some GMT action going on. Others will be checking out this video later on today or sometime in the future. So I do have an unboxing today. So I am going to take a look at one of the latest releases from GMT Games, Next War Poland, and it's a kind of quiet news day today, so I knew I was going to do a kind of a bit of a how to play as well as a review of Wild Blue Yonder from GMT, much heavier box. Almost dropped it as I snagged it there. And I will be doing a quick how to play and review a bit later on as well. I've got a couple of items in the news bag that I'm going to tackle, but first off, I think we should probably take a look at the news, or at least what news there is today. And the first thing I want to take a look at is a pretty interesting, sort of a retro science fiction looking game from IDW Games, and it's actually arriving in stores. And it's called Ray Guns and Rocket Ships. Even the name just sounds retro too, doesn't it? Here is the dope from IDW. Ray Guns and Rocket Ships has made its way to Kickstarter backers and onto retail shelves, which is very exciting. We love how this game came to life and are looking forward to all the adventures that are just waiting to happen. In this tabletop spotlight, designer Scott Rogers talks about ray guns and rocket ships, how the game is played, and some fun behind the scenes. I will mention that I'm not sharing the entire preview that you'll find over at the IDW Games website, but if you want to learn more about just kind of the mechanics and everything of ray guns and rocket ships, then by all means head on over to idwgames.com. Anyway, Ray Guns and Rocket Ships is a miniatures board game where players battle for control of the galaxy. The game was inspired by classic pulp science fiction. If you've seen Flash Gordon Conquers the Universe, read comics drawn by Wally Wood, or read the work of A.E. Van Vogt, then the galaxy of ray guns and rocket ships will feel quite familiar. Hey, wait a second, does that mean you were just ripping off those other properties? I doubt it. Ray guns and rocket ships gameplay is deep, yet simple to learn. Each player controls a planeteer faction consisting of a 6-member crew and a captain. The human Astro Rangers, the lizard Zard, the Star Pirates, and the alien Blarg. Each faction has its own rocket ships with its own unique layout. In the middle of the table is a star map with a grid that connects star nodes to each other. The rocket ships fly along these star nodes as the crew operates functions within the rocket ship. Gameplay consists of 3 turns per round, 3 phases per turn. The 3 phases are rocket ship movement, ray guns, shooting, and crew movement and action. The player who first earns a predetermined number of victory points will win the game. Ray guns and rocket ships also comes with several tokens and a 10-episode campaign book for even more gameplay variations. There's an entire galaxy of fun and adventure to be found in ray guns and rocket ships. The game is designed for ages 14 and up, 2 to 4 players, plays in about 90 minutes, and does carry an MSRP of $74.99. I must admit, this does look pretty interesting. There were some images, kind of closer up images of the miniatures that are included in the game, but for some strange reason, maybe it was just on my monitor that it looked kind of almost washed out, where you couldn't really see the detail. So I didn't want to share that because I thought, well, the minis might look really cool, but the image I found of them just didn't show them off in their best light. It is possible that I might actually get a chance to take a peek at ray guns and rocket ships in the future. Not sure, kind of working on that. I don't really have a relationship with IDW Games, so been kind of going back and forth a little bit with the designer. Anyway, let's shift gears and talk about something that younger gamers in the family are going to get a kick out of. And it is Kitty Quest. And it's from a company that I'm really unfamiliar with, Venovate Labs. And the reason why I'm really not familiar with them is I don't think they're actually a board game company. I think it's more along the lines of kind of Kickstarter consulting and promotion. But regardless, you can go to the Venovate Labs website to see more about Kitty Quest. But I have the dope. Kitty Quest contains elements of classic board games, but without the board. What? Board game without the board? That's heresy. That's heresy. Everybody, let's get our pitchforks and torches. Let's... come on, it's a kid's game, for crying out loud. Players create their own playing path and game scenarios for a unique playing experience each and every time. The path created does not have to stay on a level surface. Players can use a ladder or slide card to change playing surfaces, such as a table to the floor. Multiple paths can be created using crossroad cards. Game space is only limited by your imagination. And I would assume don't let the kids start playing these cards to move out into the street to play. Because this board game eliminates the board, so that would make it a game, not a board game. Children have to work together to form their own path and rules. Kitty Quest is the perfect way to foster collaboration and creativity among kids in 3 easy steps. Step 1, create a unique playing path. Path cards are used to create a unique game path. Cards do not have to remain on one surface. Ladder or slide path cards can be used to move up or down to different playing surfaces, such as from a table to the floor. Yes, I said that. Crossroad paths can be used to create multiple game paths as well. Start cards are placed at the beginning of paths, and home cards are placed at the end of paths. Step 2. Add adventure with events. Event cards are distributed to players, and players take turns replacing path cards with event cards. Players can vary the spacing and number of event cards added to make the game easier or harder. Event cards such as Kidnapped, Bad Kitty. I'm talking to you guys over here. I've got my two partners in crime down here today. Good Kitty, which I hope you guys stay being good kitties. Vine Swing, Furball Gag, Kitabang. All offer unique actions such as roll again, swap with another player, return to start, move forward, go back. Step 3. Go on a quest to find home. Players place their pawns on start and take turns rolling the die to follow the path for a unique adventure every time. First player to get all their pawns home wins. Kitty Quest is recommended for 2 to 4 players, ages 6 and up. It contains 132 playing cards, 1 die, 4 color sets of 3 pawns. The MSRP is $15.99. Obviously, to me, it looks like it's simply kind of a roll and move sort of game, but it does seem kind of interesting how you can go from the table to the floor and things along those lines. And I think the artwork looks kind of cool. Looks pretty cool. Speaking of bad kitties, Pinky's doing a little caterwauling over there. Hopefully the mic's not picking that up. So let's switch gears again and let's go a bit grim and dark. Or maybe I should toss out the completely overused terminology grimdark, because WizKids has a new announcement on their first game, their first foray, I should say, into the Warhammer universe. And it is going to be part of their Dice Masters line. And it's Warhammer 40k. It's titled Dice Masters Battle for Ultramar. And I do have to mention the details at this point in time are mighty slim, but at least I do have a wee bit of artwork which I'm sharing with you right now. Anyway, here's the dope from WizKids. Set in the dark sci fantasy world of Warhammer 40k, the game allows players to build teams of iconic characters and warriors to battle it out for supremacy using custom dice and cards. Warhammer 40k, Dice Masters, I was going to say Warhammer 40,000, but I prefer to say Warhammer 40k. Dice Masters uses the game system designed by Mike Elliott and Eric M. Lang for Dice Masters, and will be completely compatible with other games in the line. So just imagine you're going to have Space Marines versus Marvel superheroes. Interesting. There will be 4 factions available at the start, and players can build teams using a single faction or mix and match to create their own Dice Masters team. Players can expand their games with 2 separate team packs, each introducing another faction to the game. The Orcs Wah team pack offers the uncontrollable orcs, with the infamous orc warlord Gzagkol, Thraka, and the boys and warbikers under his command. The Space Wolves Sons of Rust team pack, meanwhile, introduces Logan Grimnar and the venerable Dreadnought at the front of a Space Wolves Space Marine force. Alright, that is all I really have. That's pretty much what WizKids has revealed to this point. There's absolutely no information about release dates or MSRP, or really even the 4 factions that are going to be included in this campaign box, because at least the image appears that it's going to be a fairly good sized box. But then again, it's just a 3D image. I could be completely wrong. It could be this big. I don't know. But looking from the artwork, it appears that we've got Space Marines, Ultramarines, is what it obviously looks like to me. Also, Chaos Marines. Don't know about the other four, or other two, I should say. But we do already know that there will be expansions. There's two already that they're sharing artwork for. And obviously enough, it's the Orcs as well as the Space Wolves. So it's possible we'll have Orcs in the base game, just maybe not the war bikes and things like that. I don't know. This does seem interesting. I'll be the first to admit I have never played any Dice Masters game, so I know nothing about the system. I've heard good and bad about it, so I don't know. If I haven't played it, I can't say. I can't voice an opinion. But it's kind of cool to see that we've got WizKids branching out, starting to use that licensing from Games Workshop, which of course used to be with Fantasy Flight Games. Speaking of that, even though I'm not showing any images, I am really interested to see what WizKids does with Fury of Dracula, because I know that's something that they're doing a reboot, reimagining. Maybe they're not doing a whole lot different, but that will be very cool because I do enjoy that game. I actually played the old Games Workshop edition. And I believe Relic is coming over to WizKids as well, which was a game that was through Fantasy Flight Games. So once I have more information about this, I will be certain to share it with you. As I mentioned, it is Wargame Wednesday. I've got a double dip of GMT Games goodness in store for us. But you know what? Let's just keep that goodness going, because GMT has a new title in their coin series, their counterinsurgency series, which is shipping right now. Yes, it is shipping right now. And it's part of, as I mentioned, their uber popular coin series. And it is, the subject it's tackling is the collapse of Roman-ruled Britannia. And I'm really interested in this because this is not a subject in history or an era in history that gets gamed a lot. Anyway, Pendragon, the Fall of Roman Britain, is now shipping. And here's the dope from GMT. At that time, all members of the assembly, along with the proud tyrant, are blinded. Such is the protection they find for their country. It was, in fact, its destruction that those wild Saxons of accursed name, hated by God and men, should be admitted into the island like wolves into the folds, in order to repel the northern nations. Nothing more hurtful, certainly nothing more bitter, happened to the island than this. So wrote the 6th century AD British monk Gildas in the pamphlet De Excidio Britanniae, on the ruin of Britain, about what had befallen the Romano-British lands. This critical period in history saw the end of the Roman Empire in Britain and the seeds of the modern nations of England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland, and Brittany. Most of us know next to nothing about this period. I know a little bit. But we know of its legends, from King Arthur and his knights through Merlin, Vortigern and Hengirst, Baddenhill and the Isle of Avalon, to St. Patrick and Niall of the 9 hostages. For the fire of righteous vengeance caused by former crimes blazed from sea to sea, heaped up by the eastern band of impious men, and as it devastated all the neighboring cities and lands, did not cease after it had been kindled until it burnt nearly the whole surface of the island and licked the western ocean with its red and savage tongue. By the way, yes, that was Gildas once again. This is Volume 8 in GMT's Coin series, and it transports us into the 4th and 5th centuries AD and to the embattled Isle of Britannia. Britannia? Yeah, Britannia. What am I thinking? Britannia. Duh, Britannia. Pendragon, the Fall of Roman Britain, covers a century of history from the first large-scale raids of Irish, Pict, and Saxon raiders to the establishment of successor kingdoms, both Celtic and Germanic. This sumptuous volume adapts the celebrated asymmetrical coin engine to depict the political, military, religious, and economic struggles of Dark Ages Britain. Shrouded in mists of myth and legend, this story, so foundational to many national groups, has been subject to many different narratives and interpretations. The traditional Victorian vision of brutal and violent conquest of Roman and Celtic Britain by Anglo-Saxon raiders and invaders now collides with modern historical views ranging from continuity of tribal rivalries to quasi-peaceful cohabitation and acculturation. Pendragon leverages the tremendous flexibility of the coin system, from dual events to dissimilar approaches and victory conditions, to capture the complexity of the period and let the players explore alternative narratives. Unlike earlier volumes, Pendragon is not about counterinsurgency per se, but focuses on the asymmetrical clashes between and among Romano-British authorities and barbarian powers gnashing over the carcass of the Roman Empire, including barbarian raids plundering the land and trying to surprise unwary towns and hill forts, then melting into hills or fens. Expansion or decline of the Saxon shore naval defense system to counter seaborne raiders. Authentic late Roman military doctrine, mighty but hard to replace cavalry tracking down raiding parties before they can return their booty home. Accessible, powerful, but fickle foederati, I'm sure I got that wrong, barbarian warbands in Britain to employ. Nuanced battle system representing troop qualities and tactics, fortified strongholds that must be assaulted, besieged, or rebuilt to gain regional political control, civil wars, coups, religious shifts, and cultural assimilation. Population movements over the generations due to good administration, barbarian ravages, or climactic changes. Epochal events ranging from Roman usurpations on the continent to massive reprisals against barbarian homelands, and an evolution of rules and victory conditions throughout the game as the still vivacious Roman Empire may or may not end with Britain fragmented among competing semi-barbarian proto-kingdoms. This includes a deck of 83 cards with gorgeous commissioned original art, short, medium, and full-length scenarios, support for solitaire, 2-player, 3-player, and 4-player experiences, and Pendragon, The Fall of Roman Britain, is shipping now for 1 to 4 players, as previously mentioned, and does carry an MSRP of $95. And that is making its way into people's hands right now. I do believe I saw somebody on Twitter who had shared that they had just gotten theirs in. I believe they had shared a photo on Twitter, and they were all excited, and GMT had retweeted that. So I believe I should be seeing Pendragon arriving at some point. And I gotta say though, it looks really pretty cool. From what I can discern, it looks like this might be kind of a smaller scale coin game, maybe along the lines of Cuba Libre, because just the map, the areas, there aren't, from what I can see, there aren't a ton of different areas. So this may actually be just like Cuba Libre, an excellent way to introduce someone into the coin system. Now, as I'm talking about the coin system, I do want to point out, for those of you who have missed out on the first 5 volumes of Coin, GMT has revealed that come next June, I know it's a bit of a wait, but come next June, they are going to reprint 5 volumes of the Coin series. So we've got Andean Abyss, A Distant Plain, Cuba Libre, Falling Sky, and Fire in the Lake, all going to be arriving once again. So if you can hold out, I know a lot of people really, the Coin series is very, very cool. Dig it quite a bit. Does take a little bit of wrapping your head around, especially some people have a hard time grasping it right away. because of the asymmetrical gameplay. Everybody's turn isn't the same. Everybody's options and actions they can take are not the same. But it's a lot of fun. Very, very cool. So I was going to say, if you were looking to pick up some of these titles that are now out of print and you can wait until June, save yourself some money. Don't go searching them out on the secondary market. Hold off. GMT's got you covered come next June. Another real quick item from GMT I wanted to mention is they had some bad news that they revealed. They were shipping out Wing Leader Blitz this past weekend, and they found out that one of the campaign maps wasn't in the box. In fact, it hadn't been printed. So some folks were already receiving their copies of Wing Leader Blitz. Doesn't have the campaign map. GMT is aware of it. They are doing everything they can to get those printed up ASAP, and they will get them out to buyers who already received or whose copies already got shipped. Of course, those who hadn't gotten their copies shipped yet, they're going to hold off until those come in to make sure that they're included. So these things happen, folks. It's just, it happens. Nobody's perfect. But I do want to point out, as far as I understand, that you can, if you have received your copy of Wing Leader Blitz, which is an expansion to Wing Leader, you can play quite a few of the scenarios. Just, I think it's, Drive to Kiev or something like that. There's no map, so you can't do it. But there's other scenarios in there that you can play with everything that came with Wing Leader. All right, so that is the news. As I mentioned, kind of slow news day. Want to hear a joke? No, I actually don't really want to hear a joke, especially with yeah, okay. All right, so what's going on here? All right, so I don't know. Yeah, gotta love the people from Twitch. I think honestly, this week will probably be the all right, that's enough. See ya. I'm just, you know what? This is gonna be maybe tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow I'll go in and get rid of the chat, simply because for some reason that threw me off, and of course it was going to be a very racist joke. It looked like that was coming. Yeah, I gotta love these people. Just jump on the interwebs and you find out for the vast majority of people in this world are pretty cool, but there are some super bizarre and sick people out there. Just how it is. Anyway, so I was going to say on this little chat thing, because it actually takes Twitch and YouTube chat and puts it together. I thought that would be something, something cool to be able to do. And it has a thing where I'm supposed to be able to block the user like right away, and didn't happen. So let me do something here. I apologize. I was going to jump into some mailbag items, which I will actually in a second. Let me try this. See if I can bring this back up. And let's see. Let's see if I can get rid of. There we go. There. Okay. Because for the most part, and I'm sorry, I'm like, obviously people can tell that I have a big teleprompter. Let's go back. Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, all right, so basically it's indicating to me that we are disconnected from all right. So real quick, for crying out loud. All right. That's it. Get rid of the chat. In fact, yeah, I'd have to mess around with this stuff. See, that's what I mean. You got morons like that who pop in and pretty much just because they got nothing better to do. It's like, get a life. Get a life. But it's kind of irritating me that now we've got this thing sitting here. So I would almost, yeah, see, this is the thing here that kind of throws me off here is that, yeah, see? Oh, for crying out loud. Okay, well, I would really love to get rid of that. All right, give me a quick second here. What I'm going to do, folks, is I am going to go to the stay tuned screen for a sec because I don't want this crap sitting here in chat for, everybody, for the rest of the show. So give me a couple of minutes. I will be right back. I'm going to do the unboxing of Next War Poland. So. Okay, so I don't believe we'll see any Twitch chat popping up. So it did look like there's, a few people watching on Twitch. So my apologies that you can't really be part of the conversation now. But anyway, that just drives me nuts. So, and of course, I need to go in and really do some modding for this, having chat. I understand that. So it's not exactly the top of my list of things. So I did want to jump into the mailbag real quick as far as just a couple of things. So first off, I got an email from Alan in Dallas, Texas. Like the second kind of question I've gotten from someone in Texas. And of course, if you have a question, comment, suggestion, be sure to email mailbag at the Daily Dope, or I should say thegaminggang.com. See, now I'm thrown off. The troll threw me off. So anyway, so the question basically was, why is the format of the show like a lot different than other board gaming, tabletop gaming shows that they see? Yeah, okay. Well, I get that. Well, we just saw one of the things that how it's different is because this is live. And I don't know if they were trying to imply that it's kind of odd the way this show kind of breaks down and how I tell little stories and I go off topic and so on and so forth. But the thing is, that's how a live stream normally is. Whereas even watching, and there are some shows out there, some channels out there that are doing daily stuff, but it's all pre-recorded, or they shoot it and then edit it and get it up that day. It's not live. So there's really no sort of back and forth or anything like that. And of course, if you mess something up, you can always say, okay, cut, let's try that again. Let's just shoot that again, or just do all those quick cuts that are completely irritating where it's, somebody's talking and they say a sentence and then it's cutting over here. And people wonder why folks have ADD, right? So, but that's why the format of the show is a little bit different. So that is how that works, because it's live. And if you don't watch live streams normally, they are a little bit different. They're much more conversational. And that's how my approach to the Daily Dope is. So once again, if you have a question, comment, suggestion, email mailbag at thegaminggang.com. Then I also had another question, and this was from Ed in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I thought it might be my buddy Ed who lives out in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but it is not. So it's a different Ed. And the question was, is the format of the show going to always pretty much be what it is right now? And they said, well, I noticed there aren't a ton of people watching these videos. And a couple of things. Number one, the people watching, I'm not all that concerned with right now, because the whole month of December is just a soft rollout. It's for me to come to grips with different things, like, for an example, some goofball popping up in chat, being a moron. And there are other things that are on the horizon. Live interviews. There's going to be some giveaways, trying to do some promos. So it's not always just going to be me talking, me doing a review or doing an unboxing or a how to play or whatever. There is going to be some other stuff going on. But as I mentioned, I just wanted to iron out the technical stuff first before I started doing anything else. Because, it's one thing I look like a dope if Skype's not working. I don't want a guest to come on and I don't have Skype working correctly to share that with the viewers. So that is on the horizon. I do have a few people who are going to be lined up to do interviews. I will point out that this will not become a show where everything is people coming on to promote Kickstarters all the time. Sorry, that's just not how it's going to be. So anyway, so that's the mailbag. So today I have Next War Poland that I'm going to be unboxing. So let's get to that. Next War Poland is the latest in, you got it, the Next War series from GMT. And of course, it's tackling Poland. And I'm actually going to pop on my reading glasses real quick because I think the print on this is a little bit smaller. And this is pretty much a standard width box from GMT. I had Wild Blue Yonder kind of off to the side there. It was taking up part of the shot. But with Next War Poland, it's the 4th volume in the Next War series. This game moves the action from Asia to Europe and allows players to fight a near-future war in Poland as the Russians and their allies invade and NATO responds. A large portion of Poland is represented by the operational map, while the Baltics are represented by a strategic display, similar to Next War Taiwan. The Russians are not the behemoth of the Cold War, but they possess good materiel and a much better trained army than before. The Baltics, using new rules and mechanics, may fall quickly, although their forces may put up some resistance and make an appearance as reinforcements, while the front quickly established itself in eastern Poland as the Russian 6th and 20th armies push forward to seal the Suwalki Gap, while NATO forces rush into the area, spearheaded by the Allied Rapid Reaction Corps and followed up by whatever nation's troops respond to the Article 5 declaration. Question is, can NATO stop the Russians, or will Poland be overrun? While Russia presents the world with a fait accompli. All right, so let's crack this open here. This is for 1 to 2 players, so it has a pretty high solitaire suitability of 7 on the GMT scale. And it does show that the standard game has a complexity of 5, while the advanced game has a complexity of 8. So that is pretty well up there as far as some of the GMT releases. Okay, so let's get this on open. And Next War Poland is a pretty, I don't want to say standard hex and counter war game because I don't want it to come across that way, but because it's, you know, it's not like an old SPI game or something like that. Okay, so the game is designed by Mitchell Land, and the system design is by Gene Billingsley. And yes, the Next War series is sort of Gene Billingsley's baby. He is well, I don't want to say entangled. I mean, he's really keen on the Next War series, of course, obviously, because he is pretty much the series creator. So here we go. We've got game-specific rules. Well, let's take a look at the standard rules. It's going to clock in at about 44 pages. So, yeah, font's actually pretty big here, so I can get rid of it. I better leave them on just in case. So, standard sequence of play, talking about weather, initiative, air power, air superiority, sea control and naval rules, movement, and this is pretty much looks like this is pretty much the series rule book here. So sometimes in the specific game rule book, some of these rules might be overwritten or modified. Got combat eligibility, retreats, replacements, victory, optional. Okay, so now we move into some advanced series rules. This is where we saw the jump from a 5 to an 8. So there's advanced components, movement, formations, and HQs. Supply comes into effect. Special operations forces, detection, air power, air to ground missions, air defenses, movement and transport, theater weapons, hits and damage. All right, UN resolutions and some alternate play. like I said, it actually clocks in at 44 pages. We got strike effects table on the back. So we got, whoops, we got that. Then we've got the game-specific rules, and now these are 31 pages. So taking a look in here, talking about NATO, terrain, units, weather once again, movement and naval affairs, strategic display. As we already understand, the Baltics aren't represented on the game map, but on the strategic display. Reinforcements, subordination, supply and isolation, targeting, detection, air power, theater war assets. And as you can see, not as graphically in depth as some other GMT rulebooks. So scenario specifications, and it looks like we've got some scenarios here: the Red Storm, the Baltic Invasion, Operation Arctic Storm, Siege of Warsaw, Defense of the Baltics. And there's some information about advanced scenarios as well. Strategic Surprise. This is a game that is really tailored for a very, very serious grognard. Folks who are into lighter conflict simulation, this may not necessarily be their bag of tricks. I'm not necessarily saying that they can't get into a game like this, but just like when and I like Memoir 44. I've got Memoir 44, but come on. I mean, Memoir 44 is really not a war game. It's, it's a board game that kind of tackles World War II. So we've got a 10-sided die, got NATO and US setup, and we've got a reinforcement schedule here for the US as well as NATO. Standard and advanced game tables, paradrops, sea control, contested sea movement. Okay. Advanced game tables. Pretty good sized player handout here. Player aid, I guess I should say. And we've got 2 of those. We've got a sequence of play for the standard game. Air defense resolution. Then we've got the advanced sequence of play. So as you can see, a lot of charts, a lot of stuff going on under the hood for next war Poland. Combat results table, terrain effects chart. And there's a couple of those. Now we'll move into the counters. And many of these have, looks like NATO iconography on it. Okay, so we've got the NATO forces. Nuke points. Uh-oh, nuke points. And of course, they're dual-sided. So there's a step reduction. So you can have units that become... I don't want to say damage, but they take casualties, they take attrition. Okay, we've got a few. Right. And looks like we've got a lot of the Russian forces through here. Of course, 2-sided. Huh. It's 4 sheets of counters. That's a lot of counters, folks. Okay, well, not, there's plenty of games I've played that had more counters than this, but I always kid around. We back in the old days, and I'm talking when I was in high school days, and we would have, entire weekends where we could just sit back and play war games, and we could play one game. And I'll never forget, there was the Longest Day, which was this just monster box. I mean, it was probably, I think the size of it, if you took like this box bottom and top, added another one, right, along the line here, and then it was probably about that deep. And it was just tons of counters and maps, and it was just insane. And we used to joke around that it was the longest day. Yes, it was the longest day of gaming. So I do not recall ever completing a game of the longest day. That is for sure. Okay, so we've got paper map. That's got a nice finish to it. Not going to be able to unfold this whole thing out. Just to kind of give you an idea of the terrain and everything. Look at the cities there. Oops, keep bumping my mic. But I don't think it really makes a bang or anything like that when I bump it, so. All right. One thing you do notice on this is, on this map, on at least the actual game map, you don't see a lot of tracks. I wonder if, I was going to say, I bet you it's on here. Yep. Okay, so you can tell you're going to need some serious table space because this is the strategic display. We've got the different tracks up there, the different countries of the Balkans, some victory point chart, naval detection, general records track. We've got the Russian players. This should be facing the Russian player, and this should be facing, I should say, the U.S. NATO player here. Wow, pretty cool, But yes, this is it's probably a game that most wargamers are not going to polish off one of the longer scenarios in an afternoon. So we've got the strategic display, we've got the game map, we've got 4 sheets of dual-sided counters, we've got a variety of player aid charts and combat results and setup information. We've got the game-specific rules for Next War Poland, as well as the standard and advanced series rules. Little, hey, thanks for being cool and buying our stuff. From GMT, one of my favorite gaming companies out there. We've got our 10-sided die, and we've got the handy-dandy baggies for when you pop all those counters out. You got someplace to store them. And that is Next War Poland from my good pals over at GMT Games. I have to be very, very honest, and I've pointed this out before. I don't have the opportunity to bust out some of these meaty war games that are just awesome for people who are really, really into highly detailed and in-depth conflict simulations. And, they don't mind a game that's not going to wrap up in 60 minutes. I gotta say, the Next War series, they always look really, really cool, but I have honestly not had an opportunity to get somebody who wants to sit down and play, just because of the time constraints mainly. I think part of it too is wrapping their heads around the rules. And I'm not saying that I would just read through and be like, oh, yes, I'm perfect. I've got all this. Yes, not a problem. So that is Next War Poland. It is currently available from GMT Games. So moving right along, I am going to show you as quickly as I possibly can. Well, I know I say as quickly as I possibly can because I'm sure I'll have some stories to float out there. But I do want to show you Wild Blue Yonder. I'm going to give you an idea, kind of the basics of how to play, and then I am going to give you my review on Wild Blue Yonder. So let's shift back over here again, and I'm going to move this over. And this is a big box, as you can see. This is kind of a double depth box from GMT. And I did an unboxing last week for Wild Blue Yonder, and I'll kind of share the story again in case you didn't watch. I was first exposed to the Down in Flames series back at Consim World Expo out in Tempe, Arizona, a few years back. I think it was about maybe 5-6 years ago. I know it was shortly after the Gaming Gang launched. And Consim World Expo is a wargaming convention, and it runs for like 5 days in Tempe, Arizona. And I happened to live in Arizona at the time. I'm born and raised in Chicago, but I was living out in Mesa, Chandler, actually, at that point. But anyway, so I go to cover the show and knew a lot of people from Victory Point Games through email and stuff like that. So I got to meet a lot of people from VPG and became friends with quite a few of the designers and so on and so forth. So anyway, somebody said, hey, have you played Down in Flames? And I'm like, no, I've never played Down in Flames. People forget, even though you're a reviewer, it doesn't mean you've played every game out there. You can only scratch the surface, right? So they said, oh, you got to check it out. They're having a tournament. It's really easy to learn. I think you'll really enjoy it. And sure enough, I played a few times in this tournament because it was just kind of show up and you would get in a dogfight. And really, really dug it. So I started picking up all this stuff that was out of print for the Down in Flames series from GMT through the secondary market. And, of course, eventually ended up selling them back on. I mean, I loved it. I loved the game. It was great. It was just, I was moving, and I was moving back to the Chicago area, and it was sort of like, well, what am I going to do with a lot of this stuff? My good friend Louie, who lives out in Arizona, was able to score a bunch of stuff. Because it's sort of like, how are you going to move hundreds of games, I mean, you can, but come on, let's be honest. So anyway, so I was very, very pumped when I saw that Wild Blue Yonder was on the pre-order, the P500 for GMT Games. And then, of course, I was super excited when it arrived last week. And I have been busting this out with my nephew Cameron, and it's funny. Every time I introduce him to a game that he really likes, he's always kind of sort of like, oh, this is my new favorite game. But Lovecraft Letter, for the longest time, has been his favorite game. I think it's more because he wins more often than not. More often than the other players, I guess I'll say. But I mean, I love Lovecraft Letter too. I think it's the best of AEG's love letter games. So anyway, so I busted this out. Oh, he just dug this beyond all. I was just over there. My mom was in town. Viewers know my mom was in town for a few days, and I was over there, and I happen to still have this in the car from playing it a few times already with Cameron. And I'm over there, and he's like, hey, do you got that Blue Yonder game? I'm like, yes, I have it. Could we play a little? So we've got the Dogfight rulebook, and I did an unboxing, so I'm not really going to go through a whole lot of this, but as you can kind of tell, maybe not so much. Just kind of comparing the Next War Poland to this rulebook. A little bit more graphics, well, of course, there's the example of play right here. But we're looking at, 19 pages, and for folks who had previous Down in Flames titles like Rise of the Luftwaffe, 8th Air Force. Is it Hellcats and Corsairs or Corsairs and Hellcats? I'm trying to remember the Pacific theater. There were a couple of releases there. Zero, I want to say, was one. There are a few rule changes, and it says, significant rule changes. I mean, yeah, there's some extra cards in there. There's a few little tweaks, but if you've played before, it hasn't radically changed. So that is the dogfight rulebook, and I'm going to kind of show you a dogfight, kind of give people an idea. But then we've got this campaign rulebook that is just jam-packed, and I'll show you some of these campaign scenarios and stuff like that. It's just loaded with different campaign aircraft, bombing missions, kind of experience for pilots and crews, attacking bombers. There's even a solitaire land campaigns. There's even a solitaire scenario, buzz bombs. So it is just unbelievable. So I was like, holy cow. Because I remember, yes, there were some campaign rules and stuff introduced in some of the later releases in Down in Flames, but not anything like this that I can recall. I mean, it's 1940 to 1944, and it is just loaded with just all these just phenomenal options for playing. Just to kind of give you an idea, Battle of Britain, Battle of Berlin, flip these over. 8th Air Force, 1943, Operation Pedestal. And it just, look at these. Malta, into Egypt, Battle of Britain, Mission Procedure, Buzz Bomb. Here you go, see? There you go, Buzz Bomb. So we've got that. Then we've got some more stuff that's devoted to like the campaign game. Then we've got a resource card, and if you take a look, it's going to show you the different campaigns, historical pilots. I mean, it's just loaded with stuff because there's pilot counters in here, campaign logs, and they're for all the various different campaigns. And then you've got all the various different missions. There's 3 sheets of these with 4 on each. Military targets, airfield, ground forces, tank farm, oil refinery, bridge, city, small city, morale targets. Because not only are there fighters, there's light bombers, heavy bombers, medium bombers, and all different things that you can do. Now, of course, this is one of the small issues I have with the presentation for Wild Blue Yonder, and it is the little tray. I shouldn't say little, it's the size of the box. It's the tray to hold the cards. And the reason is that they just come up to the top, so they do kind of move around pretty easily, especially these decks. And it's got a little slot for you to like squeeze your hand into to take cards out. And I do not have big hands. Get your minds out of the gutter. I have big feet, okay? Anyway, I don't have big hands. But you can't get down into the bottom cards. You can get to about 7/8 maybe of the cards when they're in here. So then what you have to do is you have to kind of turn it over to get the cards out. Same with with the decks. Can't really, you can kind of get in there. And I'm even using my pinky. I can't get all the way down to the last card. So here is pretty much my recommendation. I know it sounds a little odd, but And, kudos for GMT for giving the old college try with this storage, little storage tray in here. I would recommend it, and if you're going to play Wild Blue Yonder a lot, and I can tell you already, we're going to be playing this a lot because my nephew has a bunch of friends. They're all in high school. They're all juniors and seniors and stuff who are really into military and history and stuff like that. And they're a lot of times part of our Friday or Saturday night gaming group. I'm excited because you can play up to 8 players in Wild Blue Yonder. And Cameron's already talking about, oh, well, I can't wait to get, so-and-so and so-and-so and so. We'll do a big, get big dog fights going. All right, so anyway, so I had separated these out where I've got fighters, for the most part, kind of together. Let's do, okay, take those two. Let's make life easier. Let's see if we can get some Soviets. Or we can do Americans. It's fine. Who's coming up for? No, let's just do Spitfires. Spitfires, duh. Okay, let's do that. So I went through and I kind of separated these by classification. So fighter, light bomber, medium bomber, heavy bomber, and by nationality. I'm going to move this off to the side for a second. And I'm going to take a few cards out of these decks, from these decks, I should say, and just put them here. When you're playing Wild Blue Yonder, you're going to have each side. So even if you're playing 2 players or if you're playing 8 players, 4 on a side, everyone's going to play from a common deck. So the red deck is the Axis deck. The blue deck is the Allied deck. And let's get some counters out here. Yeah, let's pop those. Wild Blue Yonder is very, very easy to get into. Very easy to understand. There's a few rules here and there. It takes a minute to kind of get a handle on, but nothing insanely difficult. Let's see. All right. I usually don't do this, but I'm going to bring this camera down because I've got this camera zoomed in as far as I can get it. And a lot of times with unboxing videos, there's especially, like GMT where you got maps and things like that, you got game boards, you try to, not going to be able to get them in. All right. So the way each fighter is modeled with various different aspects. So this is going to show you a few things. Number 1, this 3, that's indicating how many hits can this fighter take before it becomes damaged. And you will see that the performance of the aircraft will begin to suffer being damaged. So once you receive 3 hits, you would flip this card over. And it's going to give you some information. When did this aircraft come online? What is it? What is the model? And a lot of times if there was like a nickname, like an Allied nickname or something like that. So if we look here, we're going to see that this little hexagon here, that number, you don't really have to pay too much attention to it. But it kind of gives you an idea as far as if you were trying to balance dogfights out. So, the 1090 isn't a great fighter. So it's valued at 4. Then we're going to see the horsepower for this fighter, which it's got 2 horsepower. What horsepower means is that's how many cards you will get to draw at the end of your turn. Higher horsepower means you get to draw more cards. This here, the VH, that's the ceiling, altitude-wise, that this fighter can attain. And very high is actually the highest. So you've got very low, low, medium, high, and very high. Performance in the aircraft will suffer at higher altitudes, though, unless it happens to be turbocharged. So, anyways, that's just, I believe the altitude is something that was added later on in the series, the Down in Flames. I don't believe early on the first releases, but it doesn't really matter because we're just talking about Wild Blue Yonder now. So then we see burst, and that means the way I kind of sum it up is burst is the firepower that aircraft has, because you'll see some aircraft will have a burst of 0, but that doesn't mean they're unarmed. It just means that they don't dish out a ton of damage. And I'll explain what bursts are in just a moment. And then we also see a performance of 6. That means that's how many cards you will draw to begin the game, and that is your max hand size at the end of your turn. You cannot have more than 6 cards in your hand. Normally, you probably won't anyway. We flip it over here. This is the damage side, and we'll see it's got this red sawtooth running along the side. Some of the bombers will show like a trail of smoke. So we see it's got this little sawtooth edge to it. So that means this is damaged. It means it can take another 5 hits before the plane is shot down. Once again, this information doesn't change. Now we see the horsepower is 1. Still has a ceiling of very high. Still has a burst of 1. But we also see our performance now drops to 4. So as these planes, and it doesn't matter if they're fighters, bombers, what have you, as these planes take damage, their performance begins to suffer. So we've got the 109E. Just taking a look at the Spitfire. So here we see it's got a horsepower of 3. We see it, this is valued at a 6. It takes 4 hits to become damage. It has a burst of 1, performance of 7, and then there's some other items here as far as, you know, bombing missions and stuff like that. That, you know, campaign scenarios that really don't necessarily come into play in just basic dogfighting. And then you also have wingmen, which the aspect of the wingmen is pretty interesting. So the concept is, because fighters would operate in various different, they call them an element, because everybody had a different, every nationality, everybody had a different name for what they called it. So in the game, they just call it an element. So the element is, for just this dogfighting, an element is going to be a fighter and their wingman. And it's going to show you, you're going to see that there's difference. They're different. You're not seeing the same performance items here because you don't have full control over your wingman. So you're just going to have like this little mini deck of cards, mini hand of cards, I should say, when you still have your wingman in order to attack and defend. All right, so I got some counters here. So the first thing that you're going to do on your turn, everybody's going to determine what is going to be their altitude. And I just recommend, if you're looking to get into the game, you know, kind of, you know, make it a little more bloodthirsty, you can have everybody start off at the same altitude, because dogfights will run 6 turns. You can make them longer. You can make them to the death if you want, but they will normally run 6 turns. So if you haven't shot anybody down or damaged anybody in 6 turns, well, then that's, you know, that's the end of the encounter, the engagement. So we've got low, we've got very low, we have medium, and high. We've got high. Is this medium? Yep, medium. We've also got mixed in here. There we go. We've got very high. So what each player will do is they're going to have their counters, their altitude counters, and they're going to pick what they want their altitude to be at. Then they're going to hide it. Everybody kind of hides their altitude, and then when everybody's got their altitudes picked, then okay, well, then you reveal it. So that would be, well, let's see these guys. Let's say these guys are flying at medium. So you would have your altitude counters sitting there. And you're going to face your aircraft to begin the game towards your opponent. So what this effectively means, they're neutral. These are neutral positions. And gaining advantage on your opponent is a huge thing in the game. So as far as if you were going to attack someone, when you're in this neutral position like this, you would use your burst number to play. We're going to look at the cards in just a sec. But you would use your burst number in order to try to attack. So if you have a burst number of 0, you really can't do any damage to an opponent until you get an advantage position-wise on them. So what will happen, we've got the Spitfire gets 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the 109, 6th. So these would be your hands that you would start off with. And before the game begins, you can flip a coin and roll a die. You can do whatever you want to determine turn order. Who's going to be first? What side is first? What side is second? And it doesn't matter if there's 2 people playing, 4 people, 8 people. It's either the Allies or the Axis that are going to go first. And everyone's going to have their hands of cards. Now, the first player in the first turn does not get a wingman phase. They skip the wingman phase kind of to balance things out because they get to go first, and they kind of get to go first through all the turns. Let me grab a quick sip here. But for the sake of argument, we're going to say, okay, that this isn't the first turn. Let's say that these guys have been going at it for a bit, but nobody's damaged anybody yet. So what you'll do is you'll look to see your wingman. They've got an offense and defense, and they have damage too, so they can get damaged and lose some ability. There's also, cockpit hits that can cause you to lose offense. The various different altitudes can kind of change. Like I said, for an example, like the horsepower. If you're at high, it's -1 horsepower. If you're at very high, it's -2 horsepower. Unless you're turbocharged, then it's not as detrimental. It's only -1 at very high and no change at high. But then again, if you go low, you actually gain horsepower. Kind of interesting. So what you would do, you've got your wingman phase, and you're going to draw. It's got an offense of 2, so we're going to draw 2 cards. And really, all you're looking at here is you're looking for an attack, which, hey, look at that. We got an attack card. So the wingmen don't worry about positioning, advantages, things like that. It's just an attack. If we had just gotten some maneuver cards of some sort, like say if we got 2 full throttles, yes, it has an attack section, but there's nothing we can do with that card. So luckily for the Brits, they've got an in my sights. And we already know that this has a burst value of 1. Doesn't matter. This is the wingman. All that matters is what this card says. So it's an in my sights. I can play it, and it's 1 hit. So, for the sake of argument, let's say the Brit decides, okay, well, my wingman, he's attacking your wingman. So they play the in my sights. Now, the Axis player would get a chance to draw, 2 defensive cards. And you're looking to try to counter that in my sights. So taking a look here, well, that's a maneuver for attack. That's an in my sights. What you're looking at with these cards, and I'm going to kind of zoom in a bit, is we've got red border attack cards. We've got blue border response cards. And then we've got white cards that can be used, and it'll tell you which, attack and response, and you get to choose which one. So we don't have anything that we can counter that in my sights. So this would do 1 point of damage, and then you would simply take one of the counters and mark the damage on the wingman. Easy peasy. So that would be the wingman phase. Let's move these up a little more towards the middle here. So now you would move into your leader phase, the main meat of the game. As we look here, wow, that's a pretty good In My Sights card. So we've got In My Sights. It has 3 bursts. It's going to cost 3 bursts to use this card, and it does 3 hits if it's successful, that it's not countered. We've got an Ace Pilot, which is pretty much a trump card. It can respond to any card. Got another attack card, which is a maneuver, which will help you improve your position. Half loop, which improves your position by exactly 2, or you can gain 2 extra bursts if you're attacking a wingman or formation aircraft. Tight Turn is a response card. Full Throttle has attack and response. And you can see on each card, it's going to tell you exactly what this thing does. Actually, I think that 1, 2, 3, 4. No, I guess it's got 2 full throttles in there. So if we look at the Full Throttle card, it says improve position by 1 toward neutral if disadvantaged or tailed. So that's what you could play it during the attack. It's pretty much during your phase to start off with. But it also responds to In My Sights, Maneuver, and Full Throttle. So the first thing that a player would probably look to do, they don't necessarily have to, but they would probably look to do, is try to position into a better position to attack, because out of these cards, now granted, there are 3 attack cards, the In My Sights, Maneuver, and Half Loop, but the only one that deals any damage is In My Sights, and it costs 3 bursts. Well, in this neutral position, the Spitfire could only play a card that is 1 burst. So we would know, well, can't use this card to attack just yet. But we do have the Half Loop, which is a relatively rare card in the deck. So the British player might decide, okay, I'm going to use the Half Loop. So they play the Half Loop. And now the Axis player is going to look through their cards to see what they may have. So we've got a Scissors. We've got Out of the Sun. We've got Maneuver, In My Sights, Maneuver, Maneuver. So the Axis player is set up pretty good for their turn with maneuvering and probably doing some damage, but they can't counter this Half Loop. So because this Half Loop says improve your position by exactly 2, this fighter here would go to disadvantaged, that's 1, to tailed, that is 2. So the Spitfire is considered to be tailing the 109E. Nothing could be done to counter that Half Loop card out of the cards that were in hand here. So at this point, the British player's probably saying, okay, well, guess what? I'm going to bust out my 3 burst In My Sights, because what happens is when you have a plane disadvantaged, well, when you have the advantage over a plane, so he's disadvantaged, he's advantaged. So the advantage plane would get an extra burst. So that's now a 2. If it's tailing, it's +3. So this would be 4 burst. So if there was another 1 burst card in here, the allied player could play that. And in fact, a clever allied player would probably play that first, because you never know what card might be coming out. And I'll kind of explain that in a second. Sometimes when you're being attacked, the little dings, a little 1 hit, maybe even 2 hits, you may just take that damage because you might play a card to counter that. And then there are attack cards that do fuel tank hits or engine hits. And with fighters, at least with these fighters, they're not multi-engine planes. So if you take that hit, it doesn't matter if you had no damage on your plane at all, you're shot down. So we'll say, okay, the British player says, okay, I'm playing in my sights on the leader. And of course, we already were taking a peek here. We know that there's no response, can't respond to it. So the Axis player is going to have to take 3 hits. Well, we already know 3 hits are going to reduce it to 4. Performance of 4, now he can take 5 damage, but just that 1 burst has already damaged this plane to the point where we've had to flip it over, and it's being tailed. So the allied player could continue to play cards if they wanted to, which obviously enough, they can't. They don't have any other attacks that they could bust out. Here I'm looking at here I'm mixing up the Axis and the allied cards. Anyway, we already see that he does, and there's really nothing here to improve his position again because he's tailing. That's as good as it gets. So we would have the damaged plane here for the Axis. These would get discarded. Then it would move on to the Axis player's turn. Oh, I apologize. You would actually draw 2 cards. Because we're at medium, we still get the horsepower 3. And the performance is 7. Now the German player will have had to discard down to 4 cards because now their performance is 4. So they're going to discard to, keep that. And when you discard, you can and during your turn, you can also discard to draw new cards, because sometimes you'll get stuck with everything's maneuvering, I guess, response cards when you're really trying to get some attack cards, or vice versa. So you have the option of discarding as many cards as you want, but keeping in mind, you can only draw the number of your horsepower cards for your horsepower. Anyway, so let's say dump that one. Okay, let's go. We'll just have this. Oh, nope. No, that wouldn't be it. There we go, this one. And when you discard, you don't have to show all the discards. You just discard them in a stack. So only 1 card's really showing. So now it'd be the German's turn, and he would do his wingman. So he does 1, 2. Well, luckily enough, they get a 1 burst in my sights, and the wingman says, okay, I'm attacking your leader. But you're still going to take these cards. So a defensive 3, and it was an in my sights. So a little mini hand could have responded to out of the sun or clouds, but no, it's an in my sights. So that's gone, and the leader would take a hit. And then the German player, what he needs to do here, the Axis player, needs to sit here and get himself out of this bad situation. So German player would say, okay, I'm going to play maneuver, which improves the position by 1, or it gets an extra burst if you're attacking a wingman. But the player here is trying to, kind of shake the Spitfire that's tailing him. So then, look here. Well, a tight turn. A tight turn will counter the maneuver. So the allied player would probably say, no, I'm going to play the maneuver. Well, okay, so that cancels out. So they get canceled out, they get discarded. But the Axis player, you can still play cards. So he's going to say, okay, let me maneuver again. Because we know he's got another maneuver here. And then the British player would say, let's see what we've got. Well, he's got a tight turn. He's got that ace pilot that can counter anything, but I like to hang on to those ace pilots. So he'd say, no, I'm going to play the tight turn. Okay, there you go. They canceled each other out. And then you would have 2 cards left. Scissors, which is become advantage when disadvantaged. Well, he's not disadvantaged. He's being tailed. So that couldn't play this card. You wouldn't be able to play this. And then the other card is an attack card. So the German player would say, well, no, nothing else I can do. I'm going to take my 1 card because I have 1 horsepower. And that would be it. They would draw that card. And then you would move to the next turn. And the British player takes over from there. So the game moves really, really quick. The thing is, you can play where you'd say, okay, well, I'm playing an Out of the Sun. And what do we got? Then it's like, oh, no, play Clouds, which would stop Out of the Sun. And it's like, okay, well, then I'll respond with, because you can, it's funny because you'll have things like, okay, so it's 1 card gets played, and then, for an example, you're using the tight turn. And say, oh, no, you can't maneuver because, or let's say it's in my sights, just as an example. No, I'm going to block that off. I'm going to counter that with the tight turn. Well, then the player attacking could say, well, no, I've got a tight turn. I'm playing that. Well, that counters the tight turn. What eventually will happen is whoever played the last card in that sequence succeeds. So if the Axis player, or allied player, I should say, played a tight turn to block the in my sights, but then the Axis player had a tight turn card that they could play from their hand, then this attack would take place. It's important to keep in mind too, and I know it's pretty obvious to mention this, you cannot attack, as long, I should say, with fighters, with planes that do not have gunners or turrets and things like that. If you're disadvantaged or if you're tailed, you cannot attack. You cannot, the Axis player would not be able to attack like this. They certainly would not be able to attack like this. You must be in this situation here. You must have the card facing your opponent, just like this, to even have a chance of attacking. So, even it's this game is just loads and loads of fun. It moves really quick. I have actually not busted this out with multiple players, but I have played Down in Flames with as many as 8 players on a side. So I know that it plays just as well. It takes a little bit longer, of course, with multiple players. And one thing to keep in mind too is that with multiple players, if someone's engaged, there's some rules where it's, because it would become very confusing if you had a bunch of other players just ganging up on one player. So if an aircraft is engaged, this is considered neutral. That is a neutral positioning like this. If an aircraft is in neutral positioning, they're fair game. If it's disadvantaged or being tailed, you cannot attack it unless you're the person already who's engaged that aircraft. Another kind of cool thing is if your leader gets shot down, then your wingman becomes your new leader. you just would transfer over the damage onto the original leader card. You're going to get rid of your wingman. There are some rules of what happens when you lose a wingman, and you actually draw a new hand of cards because it's a brand new pilot. It was your wingman you had no control over. Now you have control over the wingman. There are some small, additional rules where there's, heavy cannon and agile aircraft and turbocharged planes and so on and so forth. But for the most part, you're dogfighting. The main course of the game, the meat and potatoes of the game, is the playing cards, reacting to cards that get played, trying to kind of outsmart your opponent. Sometimes it's not a bad idea. For an example, the Axis player had the scissors, right? Had the scissors card. It may not have been a bad idea to allow the allied player to get you disadvantaged, because you could turn it right around in the next turn. So there's a bit of kind of playing with each other's minds a little bit in the game too. That's pretty cool, especially when somebody hits you with a one-hit burst, just does 1 point of damage to your aircraft, and you do nothing. You're like, oh no, I don't respond, and they're like, oh ha ha. So you take the hit, and then they whip out this fuel tank hit. It's like, no, I'll counter that one. I'll counter that out of the sun or in my sights. And they're like, oh, all disappointed. There is quite a bit of luck involved in the game because, of course, you're drawing cards from a deck. And it's very possible that, you get a bad hand of cards. Yeah, it happens. I'll be the first one to point out, I'm playing with my nephew Cameron. We were doing some Germans versus Soviets. I was playing the Soviets. I was flying a couple of Yak 1s, and he was flying... I forget what he was flying, but it was even. It was evened up. And he had shot down my wingman, so I was down to just the one plane, and I had dinged him a little bit on both his planes. And just from the cards he was drawing, he really couldn't do anything. I ended up tailing his leader, shot him down, ended up tailing his new leader, shot him down. So it went from my nephew Cameron thinking, oh yeah, I got this in the bag, to he just lost. I shot down both his planes. But I love this game. I think this game is awesome. And it's the sort of game that you can easily introduce new people to the hobby. People who have a little bit of interest in historical games. By all means, this is just a perfect introduction. I love the whole give and take for the cards. I know there are probably people out there who are like, well, yeah, but you know what? Those planes aren't, everything isn't modeled or detailed enough for my personal taste. And I would understand that because, you've got your burst, your horsepower, what's the ceiling, things like that. There are a few like agile aircraft and turbocharged aircraft, stuff like that. But the planes aren't like modeled in depth. So some fighters are very, very similar to other fighters, which isn't necessarily historically inaccurate either. It's just not, it's more abstracted than what some people might consider. So I do want to point out, I was talking about the storage, right? And then I kind of got sidetracked, and the storage is kind of a little ding, I guess, on the game. But like I said, kudos for GMT giving it the college try. What I would recommend if you're going to play this a lot, number one, you want to sleeve your decks, both the Axis and Allied decks. Make sure you sleeve those. And then what you could consider, and this is what I did when I used to have all the various different releases, I went and got a folder that was actually with pages that are designed for baseball cards. And then I would take each fighter and a wingman, and I would slip them into each of the pockets that you would normally use for baseball cards, just to kind of protect them, but also to have them handy right away, where it was like, oh, okay, so you want to do, I don't know, 1943 Pacific. Okay, cool. So you'd flip to it. You've got them all in, order of when they came online, when they came into service, and just pop them out. I would maybe recommend doing that. Just, putting baggies, using baggies for the decks, and try to see if you can squeeze them all in the box. Maybe even kind of toss out that storage insert. Like I said, yeah, just couldn't pull it. If I could get my hand all the way down there to pull all the cards out, it'd be fine, but you can't. And then you have to sit there and kind of flip it up, turn it over, all the other cards are coming out, whatever. Anyway, but that does not dissuade, do not allow me to try to dissuade you, because I'm not, about picking up this game, because it is awesome. I love it. I love what they've done with the Down in Flames series. Folks over at GMT, it is jam-packed with campaign stuff. So you don't have to just play, oh, this is just a pickup dogfight. There's the different bombers, and I mean, it is awesome. So those of you who follow thegaminggang.com know that a 10, because I rate games on a scale from 0, really, to 10, the 10 is a pretty rarefied score review-wise. Wild Blue Yonder, even with the little issue as far as the storage device, I don't know how that popped off like that. There we go. I was trying to switch over to here. Sorry about that, gang. Even with the little storage insert, I'm still giving it a 10. This game is awesome. It is excellent. I love it. It's just as good as when I was playing it before. In fact, it's better. And it is jam-packed with aircraft. There are, what is it? Like two or 300 aircraft cards. Hang on. Let me look at the box here. And of course, I can't really tell. Can't really see, because I took my reading glasses off and the print is pretty small. So hold on a sec. 300 aircraft cards. See, I thought there were 300. And there are some multiples for different fighters that there were a lot produced. And wingmen, of course. But like the medium bombers, the heavy bombers, those are single. They don't have wingmen because they fly in formations and stuff like that. But it is just jam-packed with stuff. So yes, I am giving Wild Blue Yonder the rarefied 10 out of 10. It is that good. And if you have any interest whatsoever in checking this out, by all means, and I'll just hold up the box top once again. By all means, run out and pick this up while you can. I've said it before, I'll say it again. GMT titles sell out rather quickly, and I guarantee this one is going to be gone pretty quick. I saw on Amazon is indicating that they're going to have it available in March. So I don't know if there's an allotment that's going to Amazon or something. I can't tell you. But run, do not walk to your friendly local gaming store or GMT Games online to get this. How many players in Wild Blue Yonder? It is up to 8. Up to 8 players. 4 on a side. And then you can kind of play around with it a little bit too. So if you have somebody who's experienced and 2 players who are just learning the game, you can have the experienced player take on, say, an element, or 2 elements, I should say, while the other players just take 1. But yes, up to 8 players very easily. So that is it for the show today. Wow, I was thinking, geez, I'll be surprised if I can pull this out until there are. I should point out, real quick comment popped up. Yes, there is a solo scenario for buzz bombs, but the solitaire suitability of it, because of the way the game is laid out, no, you're not going to be able to dogfight Axis versus Allies, just solitaire. So anyway, once again, I am Jeff McAleer. Thank you so much for watching today. If you are watching on YouTube and you happen to like the video, give it a thumbs up. If not, you can give it a thumbs down. It's okay. But at least tell me what you may not have liked. But be sure to follow us over on Facebook or Twitter or Pinterest or Tumblr or Google Plus or just about any social networking site. You'll find the Gaming Gang there. And when you're not watching The Daily Dope, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for the latest in gaming news, reviews, movies, comics, TV. Come on, it's been, 8 years now? You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. And until tomorrow, thanks for watching.